And let's start from the beginning. Who is this mysterious figure that worked not only as a composer, as an architect, as a mathematician, as a polymath, and who excelled at everything he touched, and who was born 100 years ago?
Can you repeat the question?
Who was this man? Who was your father?
Who was this man? I was afraid that this...
I'm sorry.
For me, at the first it was father, and that's why I wanted to speak about what I have seen of him as a man, as a father, because the friends knew him, the musician particularly, were very proud of him, of the human. But after a time, all the friends are away as him, and so it's important for me to testimony of what was this man, and because I think that it's important to know, to understand his music. It's not just details, because, for example, his life and his birth, his childhood was very important for his creation after, and for why he made this music. And even if when we will listen at Pléiade, it's important to know that he was born in Romania, a Greek family living in Romania, and he was very proud of his mother, who was playing piano, who gave him a flute when he was 5 years old, and he was fascinated by the music and by his mother and by the sound of the flute and the piano that she was playing. But she died at 5, and it was really something very important for him, of course. But when I was a child, he was speaking about his mother always, very often. And that was important. So I think that was important. After that, he goes to Spetsis when he was 10, to a school to make his studies. It was an English school in Greece, but he has to speak Greek because he was speaking Romanian before. So he was like a stranger in Greece, because every people were laughing about his accent in Greece. And so his name Xenakis, Xenos is stranger, and Akis is little stranger, so he always have been a stranger. So he was very alone at that time. For all the time he makes his studies, because he was in a pensionary, in pension. He was not. He has no family. He was
orphan.
He was
Boarding school.
Yes. He didn't come back to Romania, and his family was in Romania. Still in Romania. So he was alone. So he discovered the philosophy, the music, the nature. The philosophy, the astrology, and he came to learn a lot about everything, mathematics, science, and the philosophy, the Greek philosophy, and he was saying always, I am born 25th century too late. So he wanted he would have preferred, saying that, to live in
a different time.
Yes, when the art and philosophy and science were all together. After that, he go to Athens to learn mathematics and music, but the war beginning, and he go to the resistance against the Nazi, and after against the Britannic, and he fight. For many years he was in the resistance, and it was very difficult, of course. And finally, he received in 1945 something in his bomb in his head, and he lost his eye and his mâchoire. And after that, he was researching by the Britannic. So his father found a passport, a fake passport with another name, and he escaped in a boat in the night, and he arrived in France. So I think it's important to know everything of this to understand his music. And the thing was where he was escaping all the time when I know him. It was in the summer because he couldn't come back to Greece for 27 years. After, in 1975, when Caramolis came, because the colonel, he couldn't come back. He was condemned to death. So he was very sad about that, and he wanted to come back to Greece, and not to Romania, to Greece, to see the Mediterranean, the nature, the sea. And so with my mother, we go to Corsica each year, and it was really important for him, not to be in holidays, in hotels, with restaurants, but in camping without anybody, and to live with the nature, with the sea,
in the canoe,
and the kayak.
He was a very athletic man.
Yes.
Very athletic.
Yes. He makes sport at Species, so we continue to do that. So I think it's important to also sport for percussion.
Yeah.
Is also always he was saying you have to go
to the limit.
To the limit.
Beyond the limit.
Beyond the limit.
Yeah. Well, and when you mentioned that he was at this boarding school and he was learning all about astronomy and mathematics, a lot of this was, of course, with the teachers, but I presume a lot by himself. So he was a very curious man,
Yes.
always wanting to learn new things, right?
Yes, I think he was really despaired because of his mother, because he was alone in Greece. He has no friend at the beginning, and so he escaped in the learning everything, and that's why he learned so much to construct something new and to escape about the solitude.
He found in learning a sort of substitute for what he hadn't lived. And may I ask, around about what age you were when? So do you remember about the MAAt being written or being premiered? Do you have any memories about this piece? It was written in 1978, I think.
Yes, 1978. I think I was there, but it was the percussion. All the music of my father, not maybe all, because for the piano or for the solo instrument it's much more intellectual and difficult. But generally when the public heard his music for orchestra, but much more for percussion. I don't know how it will be for you, but generally the public was enthusiastic because the percussion, especially the percussion, he found some rhythms that he was telling that in some text that I found. He said the rhythm and the music has to take you away in the cosmos.
Wonderful. Well, it definitely took us away into building these big metal instruments that you see right here. We have 6 of them, and they were built for this piece on purpose. They're called the Sixen, and perhaps you could tell us about this invention and why they are called Sixen, which is a very curious name, but has an explanation.
6 is the 6 percussionist, and Xen is Xenakis.
Showed us a wonderful photo from 1972 in which your father and the composer Betsy Jolas were recording in Indonesia, a gamelan, and we also see a photo of the Japanese composer Toru Takemitsu very mysteriously smoking his cigarette. And your father was very enthusiastic recording, and of course we can presume that those sonorities sort of somewhat influenced. I can tell you all that there are 19 metal bars on this instrument, and they are all slightly out of tune of each other by a tiny fraction of sound. So this will be the first time they had to be played, and they were built at our orchestra by a fantastic group of people that spent a really long time making this for the performance. And so, what else may you tell us about this Pleiad and this interest in the stars and your fascination with the stars?
Yes, Pleiad is also the name of the stars in the sky, and I think he was very interesting by the music extra-European, so Japanese, Indian, Indonesian, African. So I think we can hear that in this composition, in the Pleiad, for example.
Yeah. There are 4 sections in the piece, and we'll start with the metals first, so that's 4 movements. The metals with the 16, and then we go on to the clavier, to the keyboard, so we'll have marimbas and vibraphones and xylophones, which are in the 2nd row, and then we'll move on to the skin, to the peu, which we have just right here. And the last movement is the mélange, in which there is a little bit of everything, like the best of played throughout in the 3 movements. It was very fascinating to see in the documentary also about the architecture of your father, which is for musicians. We all know that he was an architect, but it's something that we sort of read in the information. How active was he as a thinker, as an architect, even when he was very busy composing? Was it still always with him?
No, at the beginning he was not an architect, he was an engineer, and when he arrived in Paris in 1947, he didn't have money, still money. He was a refugee politic, and he just had his diploma of engineer. And a friend of him, Georges Candilis, of resistance, Greek resistance, who was still architect and was working at Le Corbusier studio. And he told to my father, maybe you can contact Le Corbusier because he's trying to find a new engineer. That's a hasard play. And so he go to the office of Le Corbusier, and he began to work as engineer. And after that, he began at the end of 1947, and around 1953, he began to propose to Le Corbusier Corbusier some forms of architecture. And he was telling also that as he was the engineer, when the architect was coming to him to ask him if it was well done for the construction, he said that if he didn't like it, he said no. But maybe you can do like that.
Okay.
So and after that in 40, maybe at the beginning, I don't know when it was, but Le Corbusier proposed, my father asked Le Corbusier to make also architecture. And Le Corbusier said, okay, you can work on Le Couvent de la Tourette. So he was working at this moment in the famous music Metastasis with a rhythm.
Amazing curves.
Amazing curves and rhythm also. Rhythm with, you know the partition of Psalfa?
Yeah, sure. I played it 2 weeks ago.
It's things like that.
Yeah.
Vertical
lines and dots.
Yes.
Yeah.
With different rhythm, and he took that with the nombre d'or for construct the windows, and
the rhythm of the windows is very beautiful.
Yes, and it take the same calculus at the same moment for Metastasis. It's very interesting.
So he made the building and the music together as one.
And in fact, it was the music and the architecture who was influencing all. So he constructed the pente vert ondulatoire à la Tourette in 53. After that, in 54, he wrote Metastasis, and Metastasis with the form of paralleloid hyperbolique. After that, in 58, Le Corbusier proposed him to design the Pavillon Philips
in Brussels.
And he take the drawings of the graphic partition of Metastasis and he make in volume the Pavillon Philips. So it was always
like this.
Yes.
Going back and forth.
Yes, and like that he constructed himself at that time. And he continued after that to develop this.
So it's very inspiring because it's also a very contemporary story. He was a migrant and a political refugee that was able to build himself through his eagerness to learn and better his own knowledge. And yourself as a visual artist, how much, as of course your father and of course also your mother has influenced your own path? We talked a little bit about that last night.
I think it's very strange because I have to be quick, but my father wanted for me, I was the unique daughter, so he was very
strict,
and he said, you will be a big mathematician. So I say, okay, but and he tried to teach me mathematics, but it was so, he didn't understand that I was a children, and always he wanted more about me with mathematics. And finally, I found a system when he spoke me about mathematics. I was sleeping, so he couldn't do anything more. And in fact, because my mother was writing all the time her books, my father was writing all the time his music. They need to have peace, so they give me, since I was a baby, drawings and paper to paint. So I was painting, and I continue, and I wanted to become a painter. And he said, no, never. It's not interesting to be a painter, you have to be a mathematician. And if you want to be an artist, you have to learn mathematics, not art. So it was difficult. It was difficult. When I became became older, I tried to fight with him. It was very difficult because it was not easy. And for a long time, I think that, and he told me that he was disappointed by my choice. So I was, maybe that's why in another life I met Louis Bourgeois when I was in New York to ask me to give me the authorization to become an artist, because my father didn't give me the authorization.
Okay.
Sorry.
But in the same way that he forged his own path, you did it yourself too. So
yes.
I'm sure you'd be proud that
yes.
you took your own destiny to in your own hands.
Finally, I think he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And also my name, Maki, means fight.
It means fight.
It's not a name. When I go to Greece, the people say, but it's not a name, it's fight. I say, yes, I'm sorry, it's my father who gave me the name.
Wow.
So maybe he knew what he was doing with me.
Yeah. Maybe he wanted you to be a painter and a visual artist after all.
Yes, of course, but I don't know. But I was figurative, and he said, oh God, it's finished, the figuration. You have to be abstract. I said, but Dad, now in 70, 80, it's finished to decide to be abstract or figurative. We can do what we want. The revolution is finished about this problem. And he said, no, you have to be abstract and to do mathematics. And maybe, in fact, I continue to be figurative. But now I see that in my work I became abstract, so...
It's interesting what you said about you have to be abstract, and of course he was driving you and of course the people around him about the maki, the fight for the abstract arts and pushing arts further. But you told me yesterday that it was so interesting to see that all the concerts celebrating the music of Xenakis are all sold out. So it's like, at the end, you followed this difficult path of contemporary music and pushing the boundaries, but it's very popular. So
yes.
How do you explain this?
I think because he was not trying to make music which will be validated by the society. He just wanted to make the music he wanted to have, and without law of the society. He was a revolutionary in music, so maybe that's why it's so intemporel.
Yeah, because it's so genuine.
Yes.
Even if you might not, let's say, you may understand it at first, you sense that there is a sort of primal force
yes.
behind it. And you know, looking at this installation, it took a lot of people to bring all this stuff here. You know, it's a very brave piece of music. It's long. It takes a long time to learn. It's very difficult to play. It takes so many instruments, and on top of that, you expect the percussion players to make these instruments from 2 short paragraphs with instructions. And I also know, because you've kindly provided footage from the archives for us to help our multidisciplinary team to build these instruments. And he was not always completely happy about how these instruments ended up. It was never never a finished project, this 6
Yes. Yes, he wanted to always better and better and better.
Wonderful. Let me tell you personally, this is a huge honor to have you with us. It's, I don't think I would be a musician without your father's music, and many of us, we sort of feel the same as percussion players and musicians. It definitely pushed us beyond our limit all the time, and still does. So we are really very excited to be here in your company and your company. for the performance of the play tonight. And thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you to you.
Thank you very much.